Good evening, Namaskar, Adab. As India completes its 72nd year and as India moves into its 73rd year, what better occasion than tonight to just take a step back from all the heat and dust of the news cycle, all the controversies, the political skirmishes which keep happening, than to try and figure out what is the journey that has been traversed so far, where have we reached over these last 72 years? What are the challenges ahead? Are we really now in the process of changing as a polity, as a society? Just imagine the situation. Some 72 years back, there were three lead characters in our politics. There was Jawaharlal Nehru, there was Sardar Patel, and there was Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. Now, 72 years hence, in our parliament, the same three characters are being spoken about. But today, the importance of those three characters, 72 years back, and the relevance today, that is being questioned. Should Jawaharlal Nehru really be considered to be the architect of a modern India, or should Jawaharlal Nehru be accused of having created problems like Article 370, which today are being settled by the Modi regime? We got a full eclectic panel of experts with us, all of them with their different takes. Our focus on the show tonight, Namo at 5, India at 72. Where do we go henceforth? Let me introduce all our panelists first. Ira Trivedi, well-known commentator, analyst, live with us. One of the greatest soldiers that India has seen and someone for whom I have personal respect. Colonel V.N. Thapar is live with us as well. Warm welcome, sir. The next to Colonel Thapar, Chetan Singh, lawyer, activist. He takes strong positions on the challenges which today are staring at us in our faces. Veer Sanghvi needs no introduction. He's been our in-house commentator, and he believes that while India has a lot to celebrate, but India may have some reasons to be concerned about as well. Sudesh Sharma representing the Bharatiya Janata Party. Sachin Tapriya is the founder of localcircles.com. They've done a survey looking at the trajectory which has been followed so far by India over these last 72 years. Sanjay Kumar, director CSDS, keeps a close tab on all evolving political realities of our country. And Dilip Cherian, PR guru, ad guru, brand strategizer, all rolled into one, but basically with a clear take on what is happening to the story of India. Let's kick off with the first big question. India at 72. We've completed 72 years, moving into the 73rd. Where does it really take our country? What does India at 72 really stand for? Dilip Cherian, let me begin with you. Your thoughts, India at 72. What does this imply for you?
I think the best way to answer this question is to look at what the young are talking about. And if you analyze what the chatter among the young is, there is obviously a great sense of hope, but there is a sense of immense frustration. They feel that India, and they sense that India should have been a much greater power. For them, the contextualization of what we went through, the journey of 70 years of getting a unity in diversity in some senses going, is not something of any concern to them. Were they concerned about the cost of putting together a public sector and therefore the whole idea of the losses that public sector are now staring at? They are not concerned about it. What they're concerned about is what's the quality of the air they breathe, what's the quality of the jobs they're going to get, what's the quality of the education they've got, and how geared are they to tackle the world.
But it's an interesting dichotomy then, Dilip, that you bring me to. And Sanjay, I want you to weigh in on this one. If the people of India today are concerned about the air they breathe and whether they're getting water or not and where they're going to get jobs from, why is it that there is a sense that we've turned hard right? We've become a right-wing country, but actually all the things that Dilip Cherian talks about doesn't matter. Something else matters to us. And we've seen an example of that in the recently concluded Lok Sabha elections. Is there a contradiction in these two viewpoints?
I would slightly disagree. I don't get a sense that people are really concerned about environment. People are really concerned about drinking water. People are really concerned about unemployment through the various surveys which we have been doing last 10, 15 years. This is a concern. This was a concern 10 years ago. This was a concern even in 2019 elections. It was a concern even in 2014. But in spite of this concern, we see the country moving, or the politics of this country moving right wing only on one issue, I think. This is the whole sense of nationalism. And this nation should come first. This diversity is not being celebrated. This oneness, one nation, one election, one flag. So this oneness, nation being at the forefront of everything. That's what is taking the politics of this country right wing.
Veer Sanghvi, explain to me, unity in diversity was an adage that all of us grew up learning and admiring. Today, that diversity, has it become a difficulty?
Well, yes and no, Bhupen. Now when we talk about diversity, it's a code word for Hindu-Muslim. When this country was created in 1947, it wasn't about Hindu-Muslim. The idea was, can a union of so many different states, people speaking so many different languages, so far-flung, survive with democracy? And the real test of India is, have we survived? We've survived that 72 years later, and we are flourishing. And the diversity of between Telangana or Mizoram, whatever, is in many ways greater than it was, say, in the 1970s. In terms of Kashmir, yes, there's always been a problem. We've tried many solutions. Nothing, let's be honest, has worked, at least not since '89. This is a new solution. Perhaps it'll work, perhaps it won't work. But even when you talk about the Hindu-Muslim question, remember that Indian Muslims don't necessarily see the Kashmir issue as being about them. There is a recognition that Kashmir is outside the conventional framework of Hindu-Muslim politics.
Colonel Thapar, because Article 370 has now been abrogated and the Home Minister was at great pains to point this out in Parliament when the debate was taking place, jaan de denge, lekin Kashmir nahi chodenge, was his viewpoint. Now tell me, jaan de denge, Kashmir nahi chodenge versus jobs, environment and a basic sense of economic insecurity. Why is it that I get a sense that it's the former, which is jaan de denge, lekin Kashmir nahi chodenge, emphasis on Kashmir, which matters the most to India today in comparison to all the other factors that I'm talking about?
Well, I look at it this way, that all that you have spoken about, that we want to have in various other fields, is only possible when the nation is there. If the nation breaks up, then all these are of no consequences. So therefore, I believe that this is a welcome step that has taken place, and like Mr. Singhvi said, let's hope that the best will come.
You think the earlier regimes over the last 72 years perhaps were not as committed as Prime Minister Modi is when it comes to this concept of a strong nation, this one nation?
Well, I will shy away from committing on that. But I say that if things had been done, we wouldn't have come to such a stage where we have to discuss this point.
Chetan, I know you want to come in, but it's an important point. Yeah. Because what I'm trying to find out here right at the outset is this. We've taken a hard right as a nation, as a polity, as a society. If we've taken a hard right as a nation, as a polity, as a society, are we then to say that the journey which we've undertaken so far, which we've undergone so far, was that journey basically not meant to take us to our destination? Is that the fundamental, brutal reality?
It is. It is. As Veer pointed out, it was never meant to be about Hindu-Muslim. You know, it was never meant to. But this has been an ongoing problem.
You think we've become that?
Recent times have shown us yes. Recent times have really shown us that we are headed in that direction. Whether it's, you know, there was a recent event on Zomato when there was an issue of delivery, whether it's, you know, other bigger political issues, whether it's the issue of the cow. So there's a lot of different, you know, seething elements at play at the moment. And I'm afraid that as a country, the seething is going to erupt very soon.
You know, let me just take that point and let me flag off the next talking point on the show as well, because it's linked to what Eera Trivedi and Colonel Thapar are talking about. Economic pain. The story of India's economy. Let me put it this way. Are we ready, for the sake of this great, strong nation that all of us certainly want, are we ready for short-term economic pain to lay the foundation of a stronger India? Are we ready for that? Sachin, in your survey that you have done, these are some rather interesting findings that one comes across. Just take us through, when you say that a majority of people believe that our existence as a global power our importance as a global power has improved considerably. But when it comes to my own self-belief in handling of the economy, I'm not so sure. How do you balance out these two narratives? If I'm on one hand sure of my country globally, but I'm not sure about my own self. I mean, I don't get this contradiction.
So I think what is coming out when we conduct, these surveys, Bhupendra, is that India's clout according to the people basically, has risen, and they expect it to continue to rise in the coming 3 years. So our survey was, before India achieves or reaches
79% citizens foresee India standing in the world improving in the next 3 years. But more citizens now concerned about equitable growth. 72% feel India will be able to leverage its demographic dividend by creating enough employment or entrepreneurship opportunities in the next 3 years. There is an inherent contradiction.
Right.
Either people are just not sure about themselves and therefore they're trying to seek confidence from what India perceptionally may have managed to achieve globally. Is that the reality?
So a bit of both, but I think, so I'll bring in another data point here, which I think is quite insightful. We recently done a survey on mood of the consumer, right? And this was more of a household kind of survey. And about 73% people said that they have an earnings distress situation where expenses are rising or expenses are flat and earnings are flat or declining. So in the immediate, very short term, there is very much an economic concern, right? Let's be very, very
Dilip, and then I'll
clear
bring
about that.
You are living in a country where the head of the country's largest biscuit company is saying that people are taking a hard decision on whether to spend $5 on a packet of biscuits.
Because we
So-
want to build a strong nation.
And people, I think, are understanding that this is not the trade-off. The trade-off building a strong nation and building a clean nation, building a clean nation being a totally different narrative, qua GST, qua demonetization, all those things. But this building a strong nation is clearly not enough for their stomach.
Why should a strong nation, Sanjay
And
ji,
the stomach.
necessarily take us through a pain of economic distress? Can a strong nation not come into existence without us seeing what we're seeing, where the auto sector is in a slump, the real estate sector is in a slump, jobs are going down, but still there is this great belief in strong nation? What does this tell you?
See, as you know that we have been doing surveys over a period of time, last 40, 50 years. I don't think that I have ever seen such kind of a contradiction in the data.
That is
which
what
we-
we're trying to understand.
which we
And
see
is that the
now.
fundamental reality of our times
Which
today,
we
this
see now,
fundamental
and-
contradiction?
And I agree with this data that, on one hand, yes, people are finding it extremely difficult to meet their day-to-day needs. If people in large numbers are saying that they're finding it very difficult to meet their day-to-day needs. But still, if you ask a question about, but are you willing to sacrifice your day-to-day needs? Are you willing to compromise on that for building the nation in future? They are ready to accept
Let me
that.
just play this
So this
soundbite.
narrative is very strong. that
Let
we
me
have
just
to
play
build
this
this
statement.
nation for
The Prime Minister addressed the nation and see what he says is his understanding of Kashmir's growth linked to India's growth.
लाल किले से जब मैं देश को संबोधित कर रहा हूं तब मैं ये गर्व के साथ कहता हूं कि आज हर हिंदुस्तानी कह सकता है वन नेशन वन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। और हम सरदार साहब का एक भारत श्रेष्ठ भारत इसी सपने को चरितार्थ करने में लगे हुए हैं।
Let me turn my focus then to the politician. Sudeshi, the Prime Minister's viewpoint versus the contradiction that Sanjay Kumar speaks about. On one hand, when we see Prime Minister participating in this Discovery Channel show recently, where he's shot in the wild, now the naysayers and the critiques will say that maybe it was an ill-timed show, Kashmir, there is a lockdown, why is the Prime Minister doing that? But I could turn around and say that it's a fantastic communication exercise. Basically, is it that what we are witnessing unfold before us is that the Prime Minister's ability to convince people is far outshining the brutal, hard realities on the ground? And the economy seems to be taking a hit. Is that the reality?
Yes, that is of course one of the realities the country is witnessing, and that is why the Prime Minister is in a position to take hard decision because he is able to convince people also, whether it's demonetization. Is
But the
GST.
reality does not change.
No.
When the economic reality
will also
doesn't change,
Reality
his
will also
hard
change.
decisions,
No.
where do they take us then?
Bhupen, you see, reality will also transform. It will take time. Certain things have happened in this country. We never expected 10 years back that this would happen. Like, for example, we are moving away from identity politics to citizen-based politics. Now people talk of what the government can give, whether the government government can give good services, the government can give good education. These are the issues. And when we talk of, opening up say 100 plus medical colleges, never before it was imagined at such a large scale like India is. It cannot happen that you open one medical college like AIIMS and you resolve the problem of the country.
So
you
he continues to instill hope. So while we go through this process of economic pain, the promise that Narendra Modi makes consistently gets brought more. What does this then tell you about the state of opposition, Chetan?
See, first we need to understand, you have taken the name of 3 leaders in your initial speech. So, talk about Sardar Patel ji and Nehru ji, they were very good friends. And Sardar Patel ji questioned and wrote letter to Nehru ji in 1949 stating that Article 370, and he was more concerned about Article 370. He has already shown interest and he was inclined towards removing Article 370. Having said this, 1952, Mukherjee has taken a cue from there. So this is what I want to say. Second, the country is
what are you
high
saying?
on
Are you
emotions.
saying that Jawaharlal Nehru himself did not want 370 to be there?
No, he
because that is at variance with various positions which have been taken by the Congress party.
See, here, like Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel ji, they both were very good friends.
I take that point.
First and foremost, that need to be get cleared.
That's not what the BJP believes, though. But let's keep that aside.
Second, they have written letters. Sardar Patel ji has written letters to Nehru ji about the same.
Right.
And Nehru ji took some time to absorb it too. And in 1960, Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, he has started taking initiatives and few amendments were also made. Look at, what was left in 317-35A. There was very less power. Okay, now they have done it. You look at the biggest pain of opposition and all the leaders and all concerned citizens right now is that in 2014, when country was handed over to you, in what all conditions? Look at what is happening now. State of economy, state of farmers. There was a data that
But
showed
he's on the point of hope. Sudesh Sharma's point is, yes, he's not denying the fact that this is economic pain, right? But his argument is hope is still being on the hope parameter. It's Prime Minister.
But the hope is not going to fill my stomach. You look at 45 years record high, and during general election campaigning, and before that they were saying no, this data is false, and then themselves they are.
But still, it's the BJP which is ahead.
See, again, this is what I'm saying.
You see, ever since Vajpayee government came to power, you have seen that widening of road, rural roads. We spoke about all those things, creating infrastructure, which was never thought of before. And that thing has continued. So the development mantra, which we say, "Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas," all those things, that has come from that is our ideology. So you can say whatever you want, but we are not going to accept that.
Vishwas example, we have seen it.
A strong country.
Sudesh Verma ji, we have seen the Vishwas example that how the opposition leaders were not even consulted. And you talk about Vajpayee ji, Indira Gandhi ji has taken Vajpayee ji along.
Why should they be
despite being the fact he was in opposition, because they worked. Sir, we have seen that how the constitutional mechanism was used. Why they have not sent every bill on select committee? Why they are using it everything? Sir, this is nothing. This is very serious. These are the very serious issues. Whenever opposition raise their voice, they are branded in such a manner that as if they speak a language of Pakistan.
Just let me set this point. Just let me set this point.
This is the biggest problem. They even not allow us to speak.
Sure, fair enough. But let's just try and settle this. I want to bring in Veer Sanghvi and Neera Trivedi on this one. The fundamental argument that we're trying to address today, Veer, is this contradiction that Sanjay Kumar spoke about. Let me draw our attention to this great example. It's never happened before in India. A company called Zomato, its employees in Kolkata, what do? A section of the employees end up going on strike because they say that, listen, we are not going to deliver goods which have beef in them. And the extent to which the strike goes is that there are comparisons which are made with Mangal Pandey in 1857, because Mangal Pandey, the great revolutionary freedom fighter, had also done something similar where he had refused to touch bullets because there was a beef component to it. Mangal Pandey was fighting against the British imperialist forces. Please explain to me, who's the villain for these Zomato employees?
Well, I don't want to focus too much on the Zomato example, because Zomato has made a statement saying that this is not a dispute about beef or pork. In fact, they've also refused to deliver pork. That there is a BJP person who is instigating them, who has appeared in all the photographs of the BJP with the Zomato employees.
But we've seen this.
Let's not generalize from this one instance.
No, but there have been earlier instances where citizens have refused to take deliveries from certain employees who were Muslims. As we saw recently, he said, I will not accept this product because he happens to be a minority person.
Zomato, and I thought Zomato gave a very good answer, which is that all of us are equal, we're not going to worry about that. But I don't think that's the real problem. I think the real problem at the moment is that we're in the process of redefining our polity. Mr. Advani said famously in the 1980s when the BJP came to prominence that we believe in secularism, but our idea of secularism is that India is a Hindu nation. Muslims are welcome to stay here, but they stay here recognizing that it's a Hindu nation.
So is that the
I think that is what that is the transformation Mr. Modi is about to bring about.
Would we be right to say that actually the fundamental change that has happened is exactly what Sangvi says? Muslims have the right to live here, but please accept that this is a Hindu nation.
That can be decided and debated. But all I want to say is, whereas you're quoting Zomato all the time, why don't you quote the Indian Army? It's got Muslims, it has got Sikhs, Parsis, Christians,
and we salute them. And we salute them.
We have, I mean, there is no difference at all.
But why? But Colonel Thapar,
so if this culture can prevail in a small organization like the army, why can't it be transmitted to the whole nation?
Then it only aggravates my problem even more. Colonel Thapar is absolutely right. I'm enormously proud of the fact that our armed forces, there is no distinction, there is no discrimination. But the truth is, you're living at a time in a society where people are refusing to buy a product simply because that product is being delivered by a particular community person. People of a certain community will refuse to deliver some other products because they may believe it's hurting my religious impact. So this economic mismanagement, let's say, economic pain versus this great belief in self-religiosity. How do these two contrarian narratives then position us, say, 5 years hence?
India is changing very, very rapidly, and I do believe that social media is one of the biggest factors, being online. Now, everyone has a voice, right? Earlier, you didn't have a voice, right? Not everyone in the Indian Army may have a voice unless they're going onto social media and doing that. So that is, I think, the biggest change here. So I think the India that we see 5 years later is going to be a very different kind of India.
What kind? Please explain to me.
And,
that's what I'm trying to understand.
And it's crucial to see now. I mean, what
are you worried with what you are you worried? Let me put it this way. Do you see signs of hope? Should we be very happy that, say, 5 years down the line, yes, we've taken a certain direction in our polity and in our society and in our democracy. Should we be happy with that direction that we've taken, or should we be concerned?
So there are, as the survey showed, there is two very, very contrarian things happening. I think India today is more hopeful than it has been ever. There's so much hope amongst the youth, amongst India internationally. There's so much soft power that India has globally now, and a lot of it has to do because of Prime Minister Modi, right? We give him credit for that. But at the same time, there are these problems, very, very fundamental problems, and the seeds of these we're seeing. We're seeing a secular India being threatened greatly. We're seeing economic problems that are just beginning. We're not even yet seeing the thrust of it. It's just the beginning. Certain industries are failing, but some people say, oh, but the stock market is robust. Is that not a sign? So I think right now, what's going to happen economically in India in 5 years?
Are we becoming unsure as a nation, as a society? Is that your argument?
No. I think
insecure or unsure?
I don't think we're becoming insecure, but there's a lot of hope right now. India is, there's a lot of hope of the greatness of India.
Undoubtedly, there's a lot of hope when the person sitting at the helms, he says, "Ghar mein ghuske marenge." They all get excited. See, this kind of excitement, it may not going to do good to the, whole country.
No, but Colonel Thapar will never agree with you.
No, I'm not.
Why should he not say that?
Perception versus true perception.
That is
what is the true perception here?
Somebody
when he
who's
hits you,
hell-bent to destroy my country. Why should I not hit? Secondly, you started with where we have reached in this long period.
Right.
We've almost reached the moon. What else do you want?
Yeah, sure. We've reached the moon. But on the ground, I can reel off statistics in terms of what is happening with the automobile sector. I can read off statistics in terms of what is happening with the agriculture sector, with the real estate sector. And while I'm with you, sir, and we must celebrate the fact that we've reached the moon, are we building a strong foundation or not, Sudesh Verma?
Yes, Bhupen, I would like to give comments on two things you discussed. I want to comment. One about Zomato. You see, Zomato says that food is their religion. If food is your religion, you should not discriminate whether it's Muslim or Hindu. And if you offer halal, you can offer jhatka also. What is the controversy about
that? Is business.
If you pander to one community and try to take a
You're
high
saying
moral
Zomato
ground,
was pandering to one
ground, then you are questioned. If you don't take the high moral ground, you're doing business is fine. Yeah? You do business.
So that's also
you are
fundamental
entering the domain of politics. And now coming to this Hindutva thing, tell me, the Prime Minister, when he took oath in 2014, did he not say that my religious book is the Constitution of India? Did he ever speak in terms of Hindu and Muslim? He spoke in terms of poverty. He spoke in terms of fighting poverty even
so
for
the biggest
Pakistan.
challenge is that.
So to give a Hindutva narrative, what is Hindutva
but I
narrative?
think
Sir, you cannot bring the Hindutva in the corporate world.
No,
You see,
I don't
like,
understand.
army, this is the
I
first
don't
time we
understand
have
what
seen
is the
general
narrative you are
election
trying to
where two
give when
defense
we are giving a
officers
narrative
are
of
fighting
vikas,
among each other
narrative of
because of the
development.
difference of opinions
We are
in
talking
open-
to
open
65%
ground.
youth
See,
who need jobs.
see,
They need development.
there
They
are
need-
business
they need
institutions,
manufacturing
business
industries.
organizations,
Why should we talk
let
in
them do
terms
the
of
business.
Hindus and Muslims?
We
Muslims and
cannot-
Hindus,
we
both are
cannot
citizens
put
of this
politics.
country.
We
I
cannot
agree,
force
I
They are
agree,
politics.
I
citizens of
agree.
this country and they should interact with
Business
the
corporate.
government in terms of
Likewise
citizenship.
Oh, let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. The truth is that there is a new term which I've encountered over the last 5-6 years, which is whataboutery. Where every time you question something which happens with a particular political party, you question something which is in a BJP rule state, in less than a few hours you'll get a tweet and you'll say, oh, this is happening in a Congress rule state, and you're not raising your voice. Now, this whataboutery business, is it being used to basically justify or cover up all areas of weaknesses which may be there with the government?
You know, this is a bit
Is that also a change that we're seeing now?
this is a bit of what era started to allude to. In the social media era, where all wisdom is resident on Wikipedia, people are able to research instantly and try and toss something up.
Right.
In an era where hope is generated by a hype machine, you're able to create contradictions to cover up your own conflicts or your own, fault lines. So, actually, if you ask me, the danger is that you're heading to a situation where instant analysis, destruction of evidence, creation of the creation of the huge fake news machine, all of this is working towards an environment which is increasingly toxic. So the environment which I was talking about,
But just to add, and then I'll come to you. I know you want to comment, but I just want to read one more slide from the survey which has been done by Sachin Tapriya, and look at the question which was raised by local circles. And I want you to just ponder, just spend some time over these findings. We can take it with a pinch of salt. It's an online survey, but that's why I've got Sanjay Kumar and Sachin Tapriya both. The question was, how do you see India's social stability? And social stability defined as ability of citizens of different castes and religion to live with each other in harmony and peace changing in the next 3 years. Now, look at the conversation, the debate that we're having, and look at the findings of the survey. 42% believe it's improving. 26% believe it's same as today. Now, if I was to simply say 42 plus 26, straightforward mathematical analysis, over 60% people are optimistic that people from different castes and communities and religions can stay together. Then is this entire debate completely flawed and fallacious?
You have to break it down, this findings in terms of religious community, and then you get the findings.
Sachin?
Because this sample has a huge Hindu majority population. You will get the figures which you are
No,
reading.
but that's why you can take it with a pinch of salt. I agree, but I'm saying should we outrightly deny this possibility, Sachin?
No, I think Bhupendra, this entire debate, the Hindu-Muslim, caste religion debate, I think it's more on social media, more on
Within the English speakers.
on TV, within the English
I mean, maybe it's
speakers.
become a part and parcel. I come from Banaras, and I tell you that when I travel on the ground in the rural areas, the truth is it's become the new reality. It may have always been the reality, it just has got more teeth. I think that's a fundamental distance as we move towards India at 73.
What we are seeing though is people appreciate the fact that the government is taking bold decisions which will generate benefits for them in the long run, let's say next 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And for that, right, for example, if you look at demonetization and GST, what's happened with that, right? Black money was sucked out of the system, right? The demand that was associated with the black money was also sucked out of the system, right? So now, when you say that, Britannia was saying that people are having a difficult time affording a, 5 rupee biscuit packet, whether to buy or not to buy, I think we are seeing some short-term pain.
Okay.
And what we have got to figure out here as a nation is, how do we address this economic situation?
No, if I was to put it this way, I looked at all your slides. If I was to say and use the word that Sudesh Verma was using, that despite all the pain, despite all the cynicism, job losses, etc., there is still hope that this regime will be able to change things around. On that hope parameter, Narendra Modi is still number one.
You want to talk about hope?
No talk about hope?
No, I want to talk about hope.
You want to talk about hope? I will come to you. I want to talk about hope of the opposition as well. But just to get the conclusion right from your survey, would that conclusion be right?
Absolutely. You know, people are very hopeful still that in the next 3 years, things will get better.
Sanjay ji, has that been the broad trend? Because I think what we're seeing unfold now, the challenges, the optimism, I think it's been a journey. It's been a constant journey from 2014 onwards, whether it was your survey or local circle survey or any other survey that I saw, corruption, religious communities staying together. You can dismiss this, but the truth is that most surveys that I've seen over the last 12 to 24 months seem to be pointing that an overwhelming majority of India believes that it is better, that people are the coexistence question is being settled much better than in television
I will put the
debates.
data slightly differently. Even if when we did the survey in 2009 or 2011 or 12, even then people were more hopeful compared to people who were not looking at bright future. But yes, I agree. At the moment, the proportion of people who see that who see a brighter hope for in future, who think that the future is going to be bright, is much higher. Proportion of people who are looking forward to a bright future is much higher.
Okay,
so there is a hope.
There is a hope. Let's then look at the next big question. And that is also related to hope, and that is hope from the opposition. Should we really be hoping anything from our opposition? The near death of Indian opposition. How is this scenario shaping up the national political discourse? Chetanji, would you agree that the opposition in this country is basically dying out, and largely because of its own misdeeds?
See, if you're going to talk about opposition, this country in last 72 years has never seen this kind of democracy where the opposition voice has been suppressed. If they say anything, they've been labeled, they've been branded as if they are anti-national, as if they speak someone else's language. So this is the first thing I've seen. Second, when you're going to talk about hope, opposition is very much hopeful, and they know they have less numbers.
Where is the? Firstly, tell me, where is the opposition?
All right. So,
who is the opposition?
See,
I want to know that.
If we'll go back to 30 years back, in 1984, BJP was just reduced to 2 seats.
Oh, I see.
And they have bounced back.
So
in 1989.
BJP came back. BJP came to power under Atal Bihari Vajpayee first time for 13 days, 96, then 99, then finally 183 seats. So you're saying you're ready to be in opposition, basically. I mean, the Congress is ready to be in opposition.
But again, the hope like fire is not going to do any good. Hope like a free-flowing water is what that is required.
No, these are all nice lines. I mean, hope, free-flowing water, all nice lines. But Colonel Thapar, let's call a spade a spade. Is the opposition as guilty as anyone else in terms of letting this country down?
In fact, if I have
only to protect some self-interest.
Put it very candidly, it is the misfortune of this country that we have landed up in this state with the opposition. The opposition is not strong, and they are blaming for their weakness to everyone
Why
else.
do you think the opposition is not strong? And I take you back to my first question.
Yes.
Is it because somewhere, whether it is the Congress party, whether it is the NCP, whether it is the Trinamool Congress, maybe the Aam Aadmi party, none of these parties are perceived to be contributing to the cause of a strong nation?
That's what I want to say in one sentence. The proof of the pudding lies in the eating. You have the parliament. If they were doing any good, they would be there.
Veer, the story of opposition, what's gone wrong? Is there any sign that you can pick up that this story may change?
But the whole conversation gives me a great sense of deja vu, because we've been here before. Just think about Indira Gandhi in 69, 70, 71. You had a strong leader who was trusted by the electorate, who could do pretty much what she wanted because her own image was so high. Anti-Pakistanism, which we talk about now, was even higher then. We fought a war. She dismembered Pakistan. The difference perhaps, and the opposition, you don't even remember those parties like the Swatantra Party, the old Jan Sangh, the Congress, or the PSP. She finished off the opposition even then. The difference was, I think, that Mrs. Gandhi's focus was class. She told the people of India, your problem is the political parties associated with capitalists, with Maharajas, and they've put you in this mess. There will be pain and we'll do okay. In this case, it's not class, they're using other targets, but it's a similar idea. It worked for Indira Gandhi. She won a huge majority, larger than Mr. Modi's in 71. She swept the assembly elections in 72. But in 73, when you had global inflation, when you had economic shocks, the problems began. So we're doing fine, assuming there is no external
Is
shock.
2019 1973?
I don't think so. I think the distinct change now is the huge cohort of the young. The young are far more restless than people who
And
are
there is
just
internet.
who are just crawling out of poverty at that time. But the hike machine is far more powerful. So in some senses, one counters the other. So maybe the young are more susceptible to this, and it's working well. But there are differences. But what Veer points out is that this kind of immense power concentrated in a few hands is something that we have seen, and we have seen it dissipate as swiftly as it arrived.
No, but is Sanjay ji, and I keep making this argument, and I keep telling this to myself as well. We did not see a Narendra Modi-like figure earlier. There are these comparisons which will forever be made with Indira Gandhi. People also say that Atal Bihari Vajpayee at his peak was also very popular, but Narendra Modi is a different kettle of fish. And let's be honest, Rahul Gandhi, look at the Congress party. The Congress has gone back to Sonia Gandhi to be the president. Do you believe the opposition now is going to stay in this space for a very, very long time? Are we here in this space for a very, very long time, Sanjay ji?
It depends. How do we define very, very long?
I'm not quantifying.
How do we define very, very long? Whether it is 5 years, 7 years, 10 years.
5 years.
But I think, yes, I don't see any hope of any sign of revival of the opposition parties, at least in the next couple of years at least.
So let's say if I was to
because they don't have a plan, they don't have a roadmap. They are just waiting for the mistakes to be committed by Narendra Modi's government. And we don't know when this mistake is going to
So
come.
it was only Pulwama which has changed the entire wave.
Really?
It is only Pulwama, nothing else.
I think that is
if
the
you're going to talk about it.
fundamental
Because we've seen in
that
the
is a
Hindi,
fundamental
we have
mistake
seen in
which is made.
Hindi heartland election belt too.
Yeah.
When you're seeing these three states which have gone for the election.
Well, maybe
And
people
what was the result?
maybe people in India are smart enough, Chetanji, to realize that they're voting for a prime minister or they're voting for a chief minister.
See,
maybe
again,
people of India are smart enough.
Again, but if there are 543 seats
Bhupen,
were there, the prime
there's
minister
one
cannot be the
thing
only.
that you don't find in the opposition today, because you have caste-based party, family-based party, then the Congress, is lack of ideology. What is your alternative model of development? You are caught in a time wrap where you thought that this was the way, and we approved this was not the way. Whatever we are doing, whether it's moving towards uniform civil code, whether on cow, whether on 370, it's all mandated in the constitution. We are not doing something that should not have been done earlier.
Yeah.
And it is based on ideology of a strong
Is the
nation.
fundamental
So are you
problem,
giving an
therefore,
alternative ideology of
nation,
development?
power,
That is the point.
individual, ideology at the end of the day? Basically, should I be reversing the cycle and should I be saying the reason why the BJP is where it is today and the reason we're talking about this strong nation which is willing to go through these economic perils is because of this ideological commitment? Has that what the BJP has managed to do?
I don't think so. I think we're also missing an important piece of the pie, which is state politics. You know, India has always been a country of states. So there's a lot of things happening in state politics that you can't, even the recent elections, just a few months ago, it was a very close call. And Congress did very, very well in the state elections. Let's not forget about that. Also, look at how quickly...
Do you see straws of hope? Do you see rays of hope? Because the Congress did well in assembly elections, therefore the possibility that the opposition is still alive and thriving?
And what's happening in state politics? You know, in state politics as well, it's a very, very close battle that we're seeing, you know?
But 50%, Dilip Cherian, when 50% people of India make their choice, as they did for Narendra Modi, when 1 out of every 2 Indian citizens is batting for one individual Lok Sabha election, to all these arguments which are being made by Ira, and many people say that, assembly elections versus Lok Sabha elections, does all this simply go out of the window? Erroneous comparisons?
You know, it does go out of the window simply because the power of numbers is so large and conviction is carried by the number of MPs you have in parliament. So when you combine all these forces, it works together to create an almost invincible force. The only problem would arise from externalities and not so much internal contradictions at the moment.
Is the other conclusion that I draw from your slides, Sachin, is that whether it is Samajwadi Party, which is led by Akhilesh Yadav, who happens to be the son of Mulayam Singh Yadav, whether it is a Bahujan Samaj Party where BSP, Mayawati, one woman leader, she doesn't know what to do, but basically one woman leader, Sukhbir Badal, Akali Dal, happens to be the son of someone. The list of family-based political parties goes on and on and on across the country. Narendra Modi comes in. Has he simply created a narrative? Look at Narendra Modi, now look at the role which is being done by Amit Shah and look at the responsibilities which have already been given to someone like a JP Nadda. Is the Congress coming across as a far more, the BJP, is coming across as a far more organized political party than anyone in the opposition?
100%.
And is that the reason why the opposition is struggling?
So I think it is that plus an ideology, right, which is resonating with the people of the country. You know, I thought Congress came out with a great manifesto, right, when they did the Lok Sabha manifesto. But there wasn't enough, right, in terms of leaders who understood it and who could explain it to the public in their constituency.
So
I think that's where they really,
one is about the cadre, and the established autocratic setup may not going to be good for the healthy democracy first.
Autocratic is what?
Second, you know, only
What do you
5
mean
to
by
7
autocratic?
people, 5 to 7 people
Sonia Gandhi
managing
not
everything,
autocratic?
rest all people just understanding and implementing
But
it.
have you seen what is the
Whatever.
CWC? Did you see what is this Congress Working Committee model? How a group of people come together, apparently there are some envelopes, names, and at the end of the day, ultimately they go back to one person. Sonia Gandhi, you talk about autocracy?
But again, you know, try to understand that the entire process was an election process.
Really?
That was not a selection
I mean, it
process.
was an election
The
process. Basically,
entire-
go back into
see,
history
and also like
elect
every-
the same person who wanted to call the elections. I mean, it's a funny scenario, which is why I believe one of the other fundamental dramatic shifts as we celebrate our Independence Day is also to rue the fall, the demise of the opposition. You require a good, strong opposition for a good, healthy democracy. Is the opposition good, strong? Most certainly doesn't appear to be the case as we speak. Let's do a short break. On the other side, we look at the other important burning question, which I think needs to be a part of mainstream political discourse. Our commitment towards environment. Is there any political party in India which is willing to say that they are going to convert this into a mainstream talking point? Are people in India going to vote on the basis of environmental degradation or not? We'll look at that question on the other side of this short break.